Hey folks, back again with more vlogging on Star versus the Forces of Evil. This is season 1, well, there is only one season so far. Episode 3, Monster Arm, and the other exchange student. This was a fun couple of episodes. Both were kind of the same idea of an alien element being introduced and seeing how characters reacted to it, which I feel so far is kind of this show's main, it's kind of its mainstay. The first episode, very much what I expected this show to be, which is not a bad thing at all. I enjoyed it. It was Star, Star or something from Star's world creates chaos within normal land. The main thing that stuck out at me there was that they really did not shy away from making jokes about it being a tentacle. The way all the girls were interested in it, and the guy who was very much coded stereotypical nerd, the way he reacted to the girls being interested in the tentacle. There's the guy who, in the audience at the martial arts tournament, who says, "That's an appendage." It's... They're making jokes about tentacle hentai. In a Disney cartoon, which is not a place I expected them to go to, I'll be honest. But, this is a show about crossing boundaries. This is a show about the grotesque. And, tentacle hentai is definitely that, if nothing else. But ultimately, this is about, the alien influence intruding and becoming a corruptive force, which is, of course, a very common theme. That's been played with in so many ways. This goes the possession route, where at first, this new power seems wonderful, but then it rapidly proves to be corrupting. Marco. For a second I was blanking. I almost had to say guy who isn't Star. But Marco. His name is Marco. Creating this... influence on him. And now it's inside him forever. It's become a part of who he is. Don't know if it's actually going to come back. Kind of hope it doesn't, to be honest. I'm liking this show being very standalone. But okay. Ultimately, not that much else to say about it. 8-year-olds who know karate are the worst when you're 12 or 13. Especially mean 8-year-olds who know karate. Because there are a few things worse than being bullied by a kid half your size, I gotta tell you. Not that I have any experience with that. Nope. But yeah. It was good. It wasn't exactly anything deep, but I enjoyed it. The other episode, the other exchange student, was interesting because it was again doing that thing I was talking about earlier, previous videos, where the alien element is not star. The alien element is something from Earth. In this case, Charlie Booth, which isn't that Charlie's name from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Wasn't he Charlie Booth? Or am I misremembering? I know I've heard the name Charlie Booth somewhere. But regardless, you've got Charlie Booth pretending to be an exchange student from the far-off land of Scandinavia, which, clue one, that's not a country. As part of an elaborate scheme to run away from home so that he can become a chef, so that he can then go back home to open a restaurant that sells food that isn't completely bland, so that people will be happy. One thing I found very interesting, both of his exchange families that are depicted are comprised, the Margot's family at the beginning, the Diaz's, and the family he visits at the end are shown as being people of color, while everyone in his town is white. Which can be read in multiple ways. Kind of the more innocent reading would be that, American white people are kind of notorious for having bland, terrible food. While American cuisine isn't quite the laughingstock it was 30 years ago, other than specific regional cuisines that are mostly not created by white people, barbecue, Cajun, Creole, other than those kind of specific kinds of things, American food is generally regarded as being very boring. This is, except for desserts, Americans are kind of the masters of desserts, and by Americans I mean the Pennsylvania Dutch. They invented chocolate chip cookies, apple pie, brownies. If it's dessert, Americans got it. But dinner? Not really, no. This is a land of chicken fingers and french fries with ketchup. Or hamburgers with mayonnaise, which I've had some spectacular hamburgers, but, don't think of those. Think of, McDonald's. So that's kind of what, so we could read it as him kind of, okay, so he comes from this culture that has very bland food and he wants to improve it. So he goes out and experiences the cuisines of other groups of people and comes home and incorporates elements of them and creates new and interesting and delicious things, which is honestly what happened to make American cuisine no longer a joke. American cuisine has elements for, the American cuisine that isn't laughed at anymore has elements of all those regional cuisines I mentioned. It has elements of French and Spanish cooking, and I do mean Spanish, as in European Spanish. It has elements of Central and South American styles. It has, a blend of all of these different styles to create new things. And it's made some headway. It's no longer considered completely absurd to the notion of an upscale restaurant that serves American food. All of that said, there's also kind of a darker take, and I think it's one that's suggested by the fact that, he plays a really bad stereotypical Scandinavian person to the point that he doesn't even have an identifiable country. And then he goes from that to playing a really bad stereotypical French person. He's really bad at aping the countries that he's aping, and he's aping them. He's copying them badly. He's doing a pantomime version of them. And there's no real reason to think that his cooking is going to be anything different. I mean, seriously, meatballs? Is it the IKEA recipe? And for French cuisine, baguettes? It's... he's going to go out and he's going to come home and he's going to make, equivalents to, like, when you go to a restaurant and they have an Oriental chicken salad, and it's like, what the hell does Oriental mean? Does it have, influences from one of the 5 billion different kinds of styles of Chinese cooking? Does it have Korean influences? Does it have Thai influences? Like, what do you mean? And what they mean is it's got orange slices and a sesame dressing. It's appropriation rather than influence. It's not going out to learn the ways of others so that you can, use that to better yourself while respecting them. No, it's going out looking for stuff to yoink. And sell as, like, an exotic other. Because, again, this show really does seem to be all about the grotesque, all about the relationship between the familiar and the other, and very much a celebration of embracing the other, of, grow a tentacle arm and see what happens. Might not work out, but it's worth trying. The whole thing is about the friendship of, Star, who is very much the other in a lot of ways, but at the same time, she's cute blonde girl with a quirky style. That's not the other. That's very familiar. And then you have Marco, who's, like, very, the very familiar. He's, ordinary guy, no magical powers, no anything like that. But at the same time, he's kind of a nerd, which marks him as other. The whole point is that everyone is an other to everyone else, and we need to stop identifying the self, the familiar. We need to stop marking these artificial lines that the grotesque is all about crossing. Like, I love the moment in the second episode, by which I mean the second segment of this episode, the other exchange student, where Star is spying on the exchange student, and she's in a tree watching with binoculars while one of, the evil hench monsters that are pursuing her is doing the same thing. And then they turn and look at each other through their binoculars and have, like, almost sort of a moment. Like, they're startled, they're surprised, but they don't start fighting. They just kind of stop. And it's kind of a great moment where, like, they're very much the same in that moment. It's silly and it's funny, but it's also kind of telling that, like, it really is an artificial line, and we've seen that in previous episodes, that the villains of this show aren't all that villainous. They're cartoon evil, and there's worse out there. Mostly they're just weird. And I like that. I'm liking this show. I really am. It's definitely... I mean, I'm not really a believer in this notion that there's high art and low art, or deep art and shallow art. That all lies in the interpretation. But this is definitely a show where it's harder to pull out the kinds of things that I like to chew on. The kinds of things that I talk about in these vlogs. It's definitely harder to vlog than, like, Steven Universe or Korra. But that doesn't mean it's worse. It doesn't mean it's less worthy. It's just a little bit more of a challenge to play with in this particular way. And maybe as it goes on, kind of like I did towards the end there with Gravity Falls, I'll settle into a groove of sorts. I'll figure out what is the angle to come at this show from, where it starts, unfolding into something that I can really talk about. For now, at least, I'm chasing down this angle of the grotesque and the other, and seeing where it goes. But yeah, enjoying the show, enjoying vlogging it, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.